Hello, I'm Simon and welcome back to the Bookster podcast from inside the SaaS holiday rental software company Bookster, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. Follow along as Bookster discuss their inner workings and their journey to where they are today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you find these conversations insightful and ultimately helpful. Now, I'm joined today, as always, by CEO and co-founder of Bookster, Robin Morris. Robin, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Hello.
Thank you for your time this morning. Again, today we are lucky to be joined by Adam Aaron. Adam, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for your time. Always nice to have a guest on the show. Last time we were here, we talked about vertical integration. You can go back and listen to that podcast if you'd like to. Today, we're going to be talking about an interesting subject, which is third-party integration. Now, first of all, I guess, Robin, perhaps you could start by just outlining what you mean by third-party integration.
Yeah, so what would be interesting to chat about is when we use third-party services, whether it's technical services, software services, or business level, what are our experiences of them? What are the sort of red flags when working with third-party companies, green flags? When have these relationships been really productive and worked really well? What are the kinds of things that seem to have worked really well for us? What are the things that haven't worked so well for us? And yeah, how do our users view those kinds of integrations as well, or relationships? So it sort of carries on from the vertical integration chat as well, but it's more about how do we manage these relationships with third parties, and when do they work and when they don't.
So I guess sort of taking a step back slightly, basically somebody, works with Bookster. They have the Bookster system at their fingers. I'm trying to think of the word. But it's early. So they're using Bookster. From their point of view, they can make bookings, they can make payments, etc., etc. But within Bookster, you're using third parties sometimes to make those bookings or payments work. Yeah?
Yeah, so we have relationships with lots of different companies for all sorts of different reasons. Some of them it's very obvious or very transparent, I suppose. Sometimes it's more white labeled. Sometimes we're using something in the background that nobody would ever really know that we're using. But It's, how do we manage those relationships with these other companies that allow us to build Bookster as a product?
So let's start then with maybe the first question. And what is the sort of the positive side to using third-party products within your Bookster system?
Well, so we have to, because some of them are absolute gatekeepers for our clients. So Booking.com, Airbnb, Vrbo, other marketing channels for our clients. Without them, Bookster would not be useful at all for them. So we have to develop those relationships. So we have to have technical integrations. We have to speak to Airbnb, Booking.com. We have to understand what they would like us to do. We have to try and do what we want to do. Those are kind of essential. Other companies that we work with maybe provide us with, sort of email marketing tool, or we have a sort of
payment processing as well.
Payment processing, yes, like Stripe, who we use a lot to help us with payment processing. So it's and the ones that are positive are the ones that we've maintained and kept going for many years. Those are some examples.
So from an end user's point of view, also positive. Like I would personally feel a little bit iffy if some company is saying they're doing the payment processing versus a trusted, well-known provider. Stripe's pretty much, the standard, if you will. Certainly one of the biggest payment processors. If you're saying you're taking care of all the privacy, all the encryption, all of that versus Stripe, I would rather Stripe do it. It's
Right.
there's a certain amount of trust there, so you would almost want to shout, "Hey, we integrate with Stripe."
Right. Yeah. So peace of mind.
Yeah, peace of
user, I
mind
guess. Yeah.
from your customer's point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, if you go on Bookster, I mean, is it? I guess it's white labeling, which we'll come to, I guess. But it's kind of, does the customer, for Stripe, I guess they do know it's Stripe that's taking your payments, etc. But for other things like, I don't know, a booking calendar or whatever else you use, is it clear that it's a third party you're using for that section, or is it all under sort of, does it look like Bookster?
As much as possible, I'd say it looks like Bookster. But it depends on the type of functionality you're talking about. So if it's something like a payment processor, obviously not. But if it's something, like a booking calendar, there may be bits of it that we've, taken frameworks for, for different, coding stuff that the user doesn't care, or they shouldn't.
I mean, I suppose what's interesting is when there's a business relationship between two companies.
Yeah.
Like obviously software is built on software is built on software is built on software, basically. So you don't have to dig very far before other people have written some stuff.
It eventually ends up as ones and zeros.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's just part of writing software. But when you have a business relationship with a company, it potentially involves support. It potentially involves their uptime or downtime. So let's say, for example, we integrated with a channel manager, which we sort of do with Rentals United. They offer lots of niche channels, or maybe some other random channel manager. We would have to push up all sorts of things out of Bookster. They would have to push bookings and things back down to us, and we would have to talk to them about when things go wrong. So the client would ask us, why is the price wrong on some random website. We would have to ask them. We would say, we're sending you this price, looks right to us. Then they might say, oh, we'll talk to this random channel about it. We don't know whether they have talked to the random channel. We don't know if they've just got the price wrong, but then they've come back to us. Then we go back to our client. So in order for that relationship to work, you have to have a really good, relationship with that third party, because it's really totally mission critical. Whereas, say, I don't know, there's other types of integrations that we've got. Say if we're pulling in prices, pulling in dynamic prices, it is much more of a one-way thing. They give us the price and we use it. That's it. There's less complication, as it were. And certainly we have had in the past very difficult relationships with some third parties that have really broken down based on not being able to support, not understanding what they're doing, not getting stuff back from them quickly. So I think if there's someone listening to this that's, in their business, whatever it happens to be, they're going to rely on a third party to provide a mission critical part of what they do. Uptime, super important. How well documented their API obviously is very important, and how responsive they are to your questions, which is a very difficult thing to understand. But do they when you're first talking to them, are they very responsive? Does their support seem to be in the same time zone as you? Are they able to provide you answers to the sorts of questions you might want, technical answers perhaps. That's
Also to make sure you're talking to the right part of their team, because certainly initially when you're talking about integrating with somebody, you're likely to be talking, to their sales team, who are going to be, putting a nice shine on whatever product they're selling. You do, I would say, want to talk to the technical team quite early on in that process, to make sure that actually what the sales team is saying rings true, because ultimately when things do go wrong, and they will, because that's just how software works, it's not so important that whether things go wrong or are always working. It's how they respond, because ultimately you're putting your brand and reputation out on the line. When you're relying on a third party, it's still your responsibility to your customer to for that uptime. And if you're not in control of that, you've got to trust the person or company that you're working with, that they are going to respond in a way that's not detrimental to your reputation.
And I suppose if you can't find such a partner, it is definitely worth considering, right, can we implement this stuff ourselves? Do we really need to be using this third party? It might feel like a very short hop and a kind of quick way to solve a particular solution, but you really do have to think hard about maybe this is a short-term thing, or maybe we should just try and build this thing maybe without the bells and whistles that this third party has, but it will mean that we're in control of understanding when it goes wrong, what, it'll be much easier to support, etc. I suppose
the difficult part in that, though, is if the integration you're talking about is relying on a gatekeeper that you mentioned earlier.
That's different. Yes, you just don't have a choice, really. One thing, like some green flags for working with, we talked about support, etc. as well. But so, for example, them having a Slack channel or like a chat channel where you can get instant access to someone that might give you the right answer. That's usually quite a good green flag, especially if those sort of chat channels are responsive. If you ask a few questions and they do respond quite quickly, that tends to be a bit of a green flag. Any red flags, Adam, that you would say?
If they're on Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, that is a bit of a red flag.
Right.
Having different people in, so
Time zones you mentioned.
time zones can be a bit of a problem. Badly documented APIs can be a bit of a red flag as well. But
I would say also
sorry, I was just going to say, what is an API for anyone listening?
an
application programming interface, is it?
It's just, where you write, so Bookster might sit here and we might say, right, we want to, let's say, what would we want to do? We want to send them a booking for some reason. In order to send them a booking, you would need to write to their API. So you have to basically write to their API. So it's the bit of their system that you program to. So you send the data to that other system.
Would you say there's usually a level of abstraction in that? You don't know how their system works behind the scenes. You're just relying on a consistent structure and way of formatting data that you're sending.
Yeah,
back
they're
and
providing
forth.
you with a format. Hey, this is how you need to do it to talk to us.
And what they do behind the scenes is sort of
So
their business.
They might be, say, accounting application or whatever, right? So you need to give them financial details. So a booking comes in and you say, right, here, I'm going to pass you the price of this booking or something. But you need some way of doing that. You need to say it in a logical way. And you do that via the API.
Right. So, I mean, I get the other question, I guess. We had a bit of a discussion before we hit the record button, and, we talked about, um, even an Apple computer, not everything is made by Apple, but people don't actually care. They just see it's an Apple computer. Um, do people care, in your view, that you have these third-party, providers, or do they just care it's a Bookster product and they don't care actually what's underneath the hood of the Bookster product,
Adam, do you want
in
to
your
answer that,
view?
or do you want me
On the whole, I would say our customers probably don't care on the whole. As long as it works, as long as it's doing the job. Um, it's from a support perspective, you've got to kind of take it on the chin that the people getting in touch, it's usually not to say, hey, it's going great. It's it's usually people that have a problem, and they want you to sort that problem. So those people might care, but most of the time people aren't getting in touch with you. If it's working, if you're not hearing anything, as scary as that sounds, is actually probably a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think they do care, really, broadly is the answer, really. So they care about functionality usually. So there are some people that care. Like there's a small number that care, but most people are more interested in their vacation rental business. They're interested in getting more bookings, pricing their property. How do I deal with guests making payments, balance payments, damage deposit payments? How can my cleaners see the bookings? Like that's what they care about, really. They don't want us to say, oh, they don't want us fobbing off a problem on another company. So they really don't want us to say, oh, well, the reason this isn't working is because of jimswidgets.com are down. Because that's a horrible answer to give in support. And that's when they do care about it. But, and we shouldn't ever give that answer, really. Because basically you're sort of
Jim's
saying,
widgets should never be down. That's true.
yeah, if Jim's widgets are not down, if Jim's widgets are behaving correctly, then they don't really know that Jim's widgets are providing us with a service that's helping people get bookings or whatever. So they ideally they don't care. Ideally, most of the time they don't. Whether they know or not is neither here nor there, really. I don't care whether they know or not. It's more that what they're dealing with is something coherent, something that works for them. They log into Bookster, they can use all these different things together, and it works. But yeah, we have to try, when we're dealing with these companies, we have to assess all of those sorts of things. How likely is it they're to go down? How likely is it that they're to work? How do we test it? How do we test their API? How do we test their support? How do we assess their suitability to be used in our platform?
Yeah.
All that stuff is hard.
So, I mean, I guess that does lead on to the sort of next question, I guess, is that who is it how do you find these people to work with? How do you, have you in the course of Bookster changed these providers that you work with? How does that actual process work? I mean, you come in on a Monday and you think, I need a new calendar manager or something. Do you ever think that, or are you just sticking with who you have because it works?
Well, we have in the past had real problems with some of our providers, or yes. So usually, if things are going wrong, like they're down, or their support is really bad, we might be forced to implement something ourselves, or we might be forced to use a different company. Usually once you've chosen a company, you obviously have to put quite a lot of technical effort into integrating. So it is quite a pain to change.
Would you say from a technical point of view, though, Robin, that we do write our software and would advise writing your software in in a way that's as modular as possible. So if there is a problem with, a provider, swapping out that provider wouldn't be as big an issue. Like to keep it as modular and separate internally as possible, so that you're not suddenly swapping something out and breaking a whole bunch of other things. That okay, this provider is providing this functionality on our platform. If they fail, we can quickly gather our resources and take that out and put another provider in there, or write our own implementation. So I'd say the approach to architecting your product would depend on you making it as modular as possible.
Yeah, that would definitely be the goal, definitely. Which probably means trying not to utilize companies that have some amazing different way of working, or some USP thing that they provide that our clients might come to rely on. So you want to keep the USP bit inside Bookster, but keep the more, you can utilize the more generic stuff on the outside from a third party. Maybe that's one way of looking at it. Yeah.
And what, without giving, I guess, names away, have you had an experience with a provider that hasn't been positive and you've had to make changes because of their service to you?
Just the government.
Just the...
Well, Adam, do you want to talk about one, or?
There was a... It was a while back. It was ancient history now. We did have a provider at one point that promised the earth and the sun and did not deliver, and it was a truly awful experience for us, for our clients. Things like we mentioned earlier about like having a point of contact. It felt like the point of contact with this provider, you'd contact their support, and then they would contact someone else, and then they would get an answer from someone else, and that like maybe they were using third-party providers as well. It really felt broken, and we had to recover from that.
We lost clients as well.
We lost clients.
Right.
It was not a good experience in any shape or form, and it's like I almost wish we had never touched them. But it was a good experience, that we now we have a lot more.
Yeah,
it is, and it's important to have those learning experiences, but it's important to survive them as well. So
So
I'd be wary of people promising the earth.
Yeah, so with those guys who they're going to remain
nameless.
They had, I think they had
We'll put them in the
they had
show
a technical
notes.
team. Look at the show notes. They had a technical team, I think, in Europe somewhere. We're based in Edinburgh, so their technical team was relatively close to us, but their support team, I think, was in Mexico or something like that. So we would ask their support team in Mexico, who would wake up, later on. How's your time zoning, Simon? So they would wake up, at like, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. They would get our support ticket and think about it. Then at like 6 o'clock in the evening, our time, they would send it to their technical team in France, who had obviously left the office. And then they would get up the next morning and they would send a reply to Mexico, but they're in bed. So,
and then these are mission critical problems.
So we'd get a response 3 days later or something, or whatever, 2 days later, someone saying, "Oh, could you give us more details?" Now that is horrific, because our client, in the meantime, has left. Have left. Yeah, they've literally just gone, well, so that was horrible. We've also had some other experiences with some, let's just say, payment providers of some description, where it's been very difficult to understand. We're trying to get them, to get any sort of visibility in what's happening, what stage our clients are at in being onboarded. They've got all sorts of products that they've sold over the years. It all seems a bit chaotic. So we've had that where, someone says, oh yes, the bank have told us, or the sort of payment provider maybe have told us that they integrate with you, and then you go and ask them and they're like, oh yes, we use this, which doesn't, it's something else that we've integrated with. Then they pass it to another department, and then you don't really know what's going on. The transparency is poor, the support is poor, they don't know who they have or have not integrated with or got, whether it works. They've got all sorts of APIs that they've been using over the years.
The product you're integrating with has been abandoned as well as another
bought
one.
Out 5 times by 5 different bought by someone else and bought by someone else and bought by someone else, and they don't really know what they've got. So I think then our client
Sounds like
sitting waiting, saying, oh, when can I take payments? Because that's totally mission critical. Like, you can't work with Bookster without being able to do that. So it becomes...
Sounds like a very frustrating situation.
Yeah, possible.
For everyone.
Yeah.
And stressful for you guys. Yeah, I think maybe a Bookster ice cream van would be a better option for you guys. Just, nice and simple.
It's a good idea.
Go to the park, sell some ice cream. Good, right. Well, let's, I think we probably should wrap up. We're now at almost half an hour there. That has been interesting today. Thank you for being so sort of candid with your views there. We didn't name anybody, so I think we're okay. We're not going to get sued, so we're all right. But certainly there's some stresses there, I can tell. Right. I should just mention before we stop that we do have our sister podcast, which is Smashing Your Holiday Rental Goals, and you can find that online by searching that title. If you have any questions for this podcast, please email them in to podcast@booksterhq.com, and we will try and answer them in future episodes. Thank you both for your time this morning. Adam, it's good to see you again on the podcast.
Thank you.
And we'll hopefully see you again soon. Robin, thank you again for your time as well.
Thank you very much.
I think maybe one of our next episodes will be a sort of debrief on a sort of conference thing you're going to soon.
Yeah.
So that'll be quite interesting. What's the name of the conference you're attending?
So we're just going to an ASSC event next week in Glasgow. So that's one to have a chat about afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll be interesting. So we'll do that. But for now, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening. And until we meet again, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.